What you don't want to do is take all of those processes that have been put in place and then try to replicate them through an entirely separate order channel, right? Logistically, people invest in e-commerce usually for a number of reasons, but there are always three big ones. You're trying to expand your customer base, trying to increase order volume, or four actually. You're trying to increase the average dollar value per order, or you're trying to get more margin, right? If the cost side scales linearly or faster than any of those elements, you're effectively worsening the model, right? So what we're trying to emphasize is that across those dimensions, by leveraging the operational model in place, you allow order volume, revenue, and margin to grow at a faster rate than operational costs that go along with it.
And to clarify, when you asked, I imagined you were referring to inventory that's back ordered prior to order, and that's the way I was answering your question. Our current system does reflect in an existing order if there's a back order on the existing order. It does not currently reflect whether the inventory being shopped is on back order.
As far as content management, how many people are you expecting to have in-house to maintain this website staff?
We have a staff of two. It's what we call our PDA department. They take care of the bulk of the core information, which is pricing and basic description. We're probably going to have a full-time person in addition to that. It's going to take care of products that have more extensive specifications. Because if it's just a wing nut, it's a price, here you go, and the name of the product. But if it's a projector, there's 50 attributes that define that projector. We're going to have a full-time person on that. So a total of 3.
Now those 50 attributes, because I know you guys mentioned searching for various products based on criteria. Is that something that Magento offers? I think it's probably more for Derek.
So literally in Troxell's case, when you look at their catalog, they have thousands of attributes depending on the category. I mean, they have dozens of categories of products or subcategories. And Cheryl will tell you, having implemented, they have thousands of different attributes. And one of the key, you look at the success criteria of this project, it wasn't just about putting the products and pricing online. One of the things that Troxell did, which was probably the most significant effort they went through internally, was they decided to expand and improve the information model around these product categories. They wanted to give more technical attributes and specifications. They wanted to give more accurate data so that a customer who's coming to the site and saying, I want to look at projectors, has more useful tools and usable data to say, while there may be 300 projectors to choose from, based off of this, and this criteria, here's the one I want, right? So managing of the attributes, things like that, which is something you can do on the back end, right? But the real effort around it was actually the collection of the data, right? And when you look at it in that kind of scale, from Craig's point, the product development or marketing group, one of the things they did was actually going back to their vendors or partners, collecting data, collecting better artwork, better images, expanding the specifications, saying, okay, traditionally you guys have never given us, we want these 3 facts about every projector you give us. And the end is, yes, Magento will allow you to sort, search, and filter by those different elements. That's part of your configuration rollout. The real thing to focus on is the data management aspect that goes with it, because that's the real success criteria.
But in general, in the CMS, you can decide on any field, whether it's searchable or not.
Oh, okay, very good. Speaking of configurations, the massive part of the Comtech is product line is configurable. I mean, it's just how we do business. Everything's configurable and upgradable, and it ends up with millions of different configurations in the end. The configurations that you guys post, is that sort of an on-page dynamic configuration system? Does it support rule-based logic and selections?
So there's different layers that you can go on this, right? You can have, the very straightforward, again, the Dell computer model. Pick your memory, pick your disk size, pick your accessories. There's price adders, affects inventory, calculations, things like that, through what we call either configurable products or product options, right? That's native, and it becomes a data management exercise, right? Structuring it and getting it grouped. You can take that model, though, and this is something that customers will do, and start to apply business-specific rules and functionality and workflow around it, such as based off of a product in a certain category, when you configure certain types of options, that there may be certain validations or other functionality in place. And the key is that the architecture allows you the place to apply that logic predictably, right? And so that's what it gives. It gives you the pattern of development so that when you have a scenario that is unique to Comtech, that is not going to be found across the board, there's a way to apply it as opposed to a black box you can't open up and touch.
And so that's something that is provided by Magento. Great.
So what I heard was that there's a good infrastructure to implement those rules in a sane way, if we put it that way, but you still have to do the custom work to put your rules into that system.
So the way I would describe it is that if you think about a scenario, the idea that a product can have configurable options that affect price or inventory. There's no programming to do that, right? That is a configuration exercise on the back end to establish your data, set up the product options, load and prep it, right? It applies. Where we're talking about something to be built is when you want to implement rules or controls around that are truly, think about it as they are unique to your business, right? Something that you wouldn't broadly apply across an industry or segment. It's what makes your operation unique or different. There's no way to always predict every one of those scenarios. So what Magento does is either give you the configuration tool through an editor to set them up, or when necessary gives you an architectural framework to apply the code-based logic that preserves upgrade compatibility and everything else.
I can add this. I think ironically something that worked out in our favor, 200 products out of all the products we sell 180,000 products. That's how many we have available for clients. 200 of those is 80% of our revenues. That's why the CEO came in and said, look, scrap the old one, let's take our 75 top products and their accessories, and let's get them out there on a new platform. By coming through that approach that he happened to suggest, we were able to do the CMS in such a way as that we could put a little bit of effort into the attributes and go, you know what, we're going the wrong way, and scrap it and go back and do it again pretty rapidly, as opposed to had we jumped in and said, all right, we're going to stick 20,000 products out there. And then by the time we realized that we had our attributes in a way that was not preferred, you might feel like, oh man, we already set out the wedding invitations, we're done. We're toast and we got to go forward. So ironically, that worked out in our favor. We were able to scrap a couple of times within a succession of days and get an attribute set that worked perfect for us.
I think this is a common theme that we would emphasize everyone. When you go implement any kind of software package, you always come in with kind of an assumption or bias based off of what your past experiences are, or your peers is, right? And what you find inevitably is when you start working with a solution, you learn no more today than you knew yesterday. Your assumptions change, your priorities change, your desired approach changes because there are things that you thought would be difficult that are easy, and vice versa. Right? To Craig's point, you go into a project saying, this is the way we're going to structure our catalog, these are the attributes. You start collecting feedback, you start talking to people, and you realize there's a better way to do this, something that's going to be, from a business perspective, more successful. One of the criteria you assess is how effectively can you go back and change over time? Does every time you change a category require a developer to go back, do a week of development, then test, and then release, and then hope it was right? Or do you have something that the product ownership group can go back and make revisions over time and respond to what they're seeing in the marketplace? And that's, to Craig's point, we started with an assumption as to what the attribute and product model is going to be, and based off of discussions with people in the field, potential customers, marketing, said some of the assumptions were flawed. We want to change it. And they were able to do it in days rather than that weeks and weeks cycle. Yes, ma'am.
We talked a lot about the sales point, but what about the follow-up? Does Magento have a built-in CRM that can then store customer transactions? And
So what Magento will have on that front is every customer has a profile that tracks their history and everything else. You have points to manage and handle customer service inquiries, support requests, lead forms, things like that. And then if you get to the point where you want to do true CRM, right, B2B, opportunity, funnel management, things along those lines, it provides the integration framework to tie your accounts in Magento to a CRM model that allows you to do contract management, things along those lines.
or what about just something simpler like who bought what, and then this is the email they get?
That's the customer communication, the order confirmation, status updates. That's part of the platform by default. The ability to go on the back end and pull order, sample transactional order reports, things like that is part of the back end as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One of the things I heard about Magento is that it's pretty intense on servers, so you really have, you have to plan to scale it out ahead of time. Have you guys seen that when you guys
I know
moved to it?
what we spent on our server, I can share that with you. It was a $7,000 server. It seems to more than fit the bill. It seems to be, you know, a sledgehammer. So,
You guys are doing it in-house?
yeah, it's in-house server.
So I would tell you from an architectural side, the elements that, like I said at the very beginning or earlier on, when you look at infrastructure assessment, this is one of the things we do with people, is that you're looking at the expected traffic patterns, not just initially, but you know, based on everyone's pie in the sky growth, what's it going to look like in 3 months, 6 months, things along those lines. And then whether you're hosting on-site or you're leveraging a cloud provider, there are platforms and configurations available. Where Magento is heavy is going to be on, more than anything, is around memory, right? Because it does a lot of caching in order to minimize page load time. And the database benefits, the more memory you provide at the database layer, the more you can do things like caching indexes and things like that, which allow very high levels of transaction. Now, I would tell you that most people who we implement with on Enterprise Edition, which is going to be require more memory than some of those because it does more caching or it's capable of it, they're going out with boxes that are basically 6, 8 gigs of RAM, which is, for most people now, it's starting points on most cloud offerings. So we're not talking about dedicated multi-server farms unless you're throwing several thousand transactions an hour at it, right? At that point, it's a matter of resiliency. Most of our implementations thus far have been single server, and as long as there's adequate memory to it, there's no real issue with any performance or anything else on that. But memory is the biggest driver on it.
Single web and database server combined?
In many cases, yeah. Some people, depending on their integration strategy, will separate the database server out, depending on how their network's deployed. But, you know, realistically, if you're running an 8 gig dual processor multi-core box, right, and you have a sufficient model for disk management, you know, a box with 6 or 8 gigs RAM is going to handle hundreds of transactions an hour without ever hitting the midway point. It's just, there are some significant scaling advantages to it.
I have kind of a technical question, but it does have to do with space on the server. We run several websites under one install, so the SKUs are constantly turning over and products are going in and out. And when products are removed, all the images are still left.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys manage that?
So, couple ways on it. And part of this depends too on what your strategy is around customer order history and things like that in terms of what you want customers to have access to 2 years after they place an order, right? Let's assume for a second that if a customer's looking at historical orders, they don't need to see images and everything else in place if they go back to that product. But you can, you know, one of the things that happens on a product catalog is you have the very basic definition of whether a product's active or inactive, right? And the ability to tie logic that says when a product goes inactive and it's been inactive for X amount of time, I'm going to basically archive it off, and I'm going to archive or remove the image or artwork associated with it. All that information is related, so you have the ability to attach processes that basically prune and maintain that over time. Because to your point, one of the biggest drivers of disk space utilization is going to just be image, artwork stuff. The database in itself is not very big. I mean, usually a 1 gig database is pretty massive. Yes, sir.
So obviously we talked about getting the information onto the website, managing the content. You talked a lot about improving your specs and the information that's available to customers. So you guys provide various criteria for searching, but you also had specs and data sheets and such. What other information other than an image, a price, and inventory are you trying to get in front of the customer that they find value in?
On our next phase, we're going to have, as an example, owner's manuals.
Mm-hmm.
Even on discontinued and obsolete product, and that product's going to stay in our database intentionally, because if customers shopping for a product and they think that's the model number they want and they land on that in their model, it's going to guide them to the replacement. Also, if they're looking for an owner's manual and they land on that product, they're going to see, oh, it's discontinued. Out of curiosity, they might continue to shop for the replacement and go, you know what, maybe I just want to buy a new one.
So your 180,000 products are in a way a hook to just bring people in to, or help people looking for one of those it increases the
Yeah,
chance of
ultimately, in a
finding.
future phase, when all of our products are on the new site, that's absolutely the case. Because even if it doesn't have, even if only 20,000 products have all their specifications fully fleshed out, and ultimately we have the other 160,000 products out there, they still search on those model numbers. We get those
Right.
kind of hits on our legacy site all the time.
Right. Because you said, didn't you say there were just 200 products were responsible for 80% of your revenue?
80% of our revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of way break the whole 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And the other thing to consider around that too, when we talk about archiving old products, things like that, customers who buy items, who go back for support, when they don't find it, what's the first thing they do? They start emailing or calling in, right? And so now you have people answering the phone, responding to items who are focused on, who should be focused on other things. And this, potentially, the cost of content, if you're handling it in an effective way, has a direct ability to lower kind of ongoing operational support needs over time as well. So, you know, to Craig's point, not only is it the ability to position a replacement part, an alternative, or a upsell opportunity, it helps you head off some of the call center impact, if you will, that can come over time.
And Magento has SEO out of the box, so that's another advantage.
Thank you, Craig. So just as recap, obviously a lot of information, and a lot of this can be kind of broken down into much more granular details, both for Troxell and a lot of other things. Just to kind of, you know, finish up and give everybody kind of a recap, you know, for everyone who's asked, Levementum is a partner and system integrator and implementation assistant for Magento. We work with customers who are interested in trying to take, you know, business-specific solutions and needs and trying to, you know, make the best decisions about what to implement, what needs to be changed, what is just a stock install, and trying to help them manage that implementation process. That involves sometimes us helping customers implement for them. In the case of Troxell, working with their team and actually training and educating them so that they can be self-sufficient over time as well. But either way, it's about helping customers achieve business-related success. So yes, we're a technical implementation company, but really one of our main, what we consider to be a value add and direct differentiator is the ability to implement within the context of a specific business's needs, as opposed to this is our cookie cutter package. So obviously we're based in Phoenix. This is the second floor above is our office. Anyone who would like is welcome to come up afterwards, and if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about in more detail. But we have offices in several locations here in North America, Boston, Portland, Green Bay of all places, as well as an overseas office in Sydney. We help specifically in a number of different areas, but our two largest practices and what we focus on the heaviest is Magento e-commerce and Sugar CRM on the CRM side, both of which are open source models, and we typically partner with the leading top open source partner in any given space or industry. So if there's anything anybody wants, we're going to actually take these materials and some other items. They'll be posted online in the next couple days. We also available for anyone who wants to get any follow-up information. My business card as well as Cheryl's are on the back table. You're welcome to contact us at any time, follow up, even if it's just Q&A, right? You want to talk about something specific about your doing. And I also want to again remind everyone, for those who, either yourself or someone in your company who has kind of a technical responsibility, Levementum and Cheryl Tislin run the Phoenix-based Magento meetup every month. And we usually meet at least once a month. We met this past yesterday. And it's a technical session that we go over specific topics around the platform, architecture, code reviews, everything else. Everyone's invited to come at any time. You can go to meetup.com, right? And register, find the group, register for it, and you get notifications about when the events are occurring, what the topics are, everything else. Right? So if there's any other questions, Troxell, Magento, Levementum, anyone else? Right. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for coming. And again, anything else we can do for your inquiry, please feel to contact me now, offline, whatever's best for you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, we just have questions. Do you have a business? Not on the test.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
Coming right back.
It's auto parts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
yeah. And,
What's in your time? Seniors, I just need, you guys did one for Bell Honda. I know Glenn real well. In fact, they're one of our suppliers. Yeah, we,
oh, you guys, which one?
dealer reps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we